Fit Strong Women Over 50, podcast episode 25.
Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast for the Becoming Ellie community. Today's episode is setting goals for the new year. I'm Jill.
And I'm Chris. You might be wondering who Ellie is if this is your first time to listen to our podcast. And she was the Norse goddess of aging. And when she was challenged to a wrestling match with Thor, everyone was really surprised when she beat him. So Jill and I want to be like Ellie, becoming
Yay,
Ellie. Yay, Ellie!
Beat Thor! If you would like to listen to more podcasts, be sure to subscribe by email to our newsletter and podcast. That's not right.
Well, it could be right because you won't miss a podcast or any of our articles. If you subscribe by podcast, you might miss the articles. So there's a variety of ways to subscribe, I guess. We'd love to have you subscribe by email so that you don't miss anything.
Perfect. Okay. Also, you can also subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, I like to do that myself to my podcasts because I'm usually not on my computer when I'm listening to a podcast.
Right. But the emails are great too because then you know what's going on. We also have a Facebook page and we have a private Facebook group, which we encourage you to join.
Yes. In fact, we're finding that that's become a real active Becoming Ellie part of the community. Those that like Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, we are there too, but it's basically just posting that something new has come out.
So, Chris, it's the beginning of 2019.
Yes.
So, you know what that means. It's traditional at this time to do resolutions. So,
right.
Are you doing resolutions or what's your thought on that?
You know my thought about resolutions. There's something about that word resolution that turns me off. I think it's like that nagging feeling, the word should, like I really should do something. So I find that resolutions doesn't do it for me. I don't know if it's that it's not achievable or it's unrealistic, but I rather look at setting, well, in the past I've set words, for the year. And in 2018, I did consistency over intensity and also the word resilience, because those were something that I really wanted to focus on. But I don't know, maybe goals is a better way to look at it for me. I don't know. How about you? Are you a resolution person?
Well, I've done the words, and last year I said I called them goals, not resolutions, but they were pretty resolution-like, and I really failed to meet them. So,
well, maybe you feel the same way about resolutions that I do.
It's a little discouraging to be in November and think, I said I was going to do this, and I didn't do it.
You've done words before, though, right?
And I have done the words, and I will say I find the words to be, because it's sort of a theme for your year, and the words are a good way to sort of focus your intentions, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a couple years ago, one of my words was reduce.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really wanting to say like reduce weight or anything, though that's, always something I could do. But,
I think of reduce and I think reduce clutter because that's what I need to do.
I was trying to get rid of clutter. And as you know, I spent the past year getting rid of a ton of stuff. For the listeners who don't know, I sold my house. So I went through got rid of a lot of stuff. And so I reduced a lot. I have more to reduce. But it's funny how those themes can sometimes really reflect what's important to you, and articulating them with a word does help you achieve them, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sets an intention. And
yes.
whether you call it a goal or a focus or a resolution or whatever, there's something about a new year. And I always find that I feel the same way in September. It's sort of like the school year starting, but things that I want to accomplish or look at about my life and maybe improve or get rid of something that isn't serving me anymore. If I have to pick a goal for this year, I would say my goal is to be healthy and fit.
Then my question, of course, is how will you know when you reach that goal?
Right. Oh, yeah. And so maybe I should focus on something like good habits instead of healthy and fit, because it's very vague. And, they always are talking about SMART goals that, are something that's realistic, achievable, has a time, measurable. What's the S mean? I forget what the S is. Strategic, probably.
Probably something like that. Yeah, I don't know, but that sounds right.
Yeah. So I guess focusing on exercise, maybe focusing on eating. And for me, primarily, I think I need to reduce stress and really focus my mind. So I'm not jumping all over the place.
So I think it's fine to say my goal for this year is to be healthy and fit. And then rather than, you just listed 3 or 4 things. So rather than it being January and saying, all right, I'm going to change the way I'm eating and I'm going to sleep more and I'm going to work out more, is that maybe what we need to do is say, okay, it's January. My goal for the year is to be healthy and fit. What am I going to do first? And maybe I'm going to try to improve my sleep right now, or I'm going to drink more water, or I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week, or whatever number works for you. Something. But maybe that's I think, and this, which would also help with the focus if we just pick one thing to do for a few weeks to get that one down and then add the next one. So if you say, I'm going to drink more water, you work on drinking more water. And then in a couple of weeks, you say, okay, I got the water down. Now I'm going to add another vegetable to each meal, or, whatever works for you.
Right. Well, eating more vegetables, I think, is a great goal. Something that I plan to do, but I've been doing that one for a long time. And the water and the gym. It's like I've done so many of these things and added them into my life. I think what I need to do is focus more. We've been doing races the last few years and I love doing that, but I'm finding that more is not necessarily better after a while. And I think if I have to say I'm going to exercise a certain way, I think my exercise is going to revolve around yoga. And I do have a couple races on the calendar. I have already signed up for the Cleveland Half Marathon. I signed up when the price was low with the idea of if I don't train enough, instead of trying to grit my teeth and get through it, I'll just change it to a 10K instead of what is a half marathon? A 21K, 22K, something like that.
You're asking me to do metric.
I don't know.
I'm an American. I don't do metric well.
I think it's a 21K. I'll probably do a 5K in April as a training race or a run to, I like the raccoon run.
Right.
But maybe I'll do something else instead. I don't know. I haven't committed to that one totally.
I have been a big fan of signing up for races and having that on my calendar, but I'm going to try something a little different this year. I decided the difference in price was small enough typically that I'm just going to wait and see which race I want to do. So I'm not eliminating races. I'm just saying maybe I don't want to just sign up for one because that's the one I've always done. I'm sort of waiting to see what shape I'm in. I mean, last year I was not in the greatest shape and I was signed up to do the Cleveland Half Marathon and I did it and we had a lot of fun doing it, so I'm not complaining about it. But I would not have paid for that given the condition I was in a month earlier.
And you know what the other advantage is? You can see how the weather is going to be because the weather in Ohio really determines how fun the race is. Makes a difference. It really does. Whether it's too hot, too cold, snowing, raining, you have it. You can look at the weather and sign up at the last minute. We used to do that for the Frosty 5 because in December you really don't know what the weather's going to be.
So the Frosty 5 is a 5-mile race that runs on Christmas Eve day. So in Ohio, it could be very cold. It could be pretty warm. You never know.
It might even be icy.
Yeah. I've run that race. Well, I know, and you have too, because we ran it together. We've
Right.
run that race at least a couple of times. And one time I think it was pretty cold.
Right.
And one time it was pretty warm.
Yep. And I've run that race a week early when I had to pick someone up at the airport, so
Right.
It's all different. I do love doing races. And I
do too, but I'm going to try it this year because it seems to me that, and so maybe instead of signing up for, say, the Cleveland Half Marathon, I'll see what else is going on, or maybe I'll be traveling somewhere and I'll think, well, let's look for a race wherever I am.
Well, Jewel had talked about that marathon and it made it sound so fun. The one up in Niagara in the beginning of June.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that might be a good one to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm going to try it. We'll see how this works. It
Right.
may be that next year I'll say, that wasn't such a great plan because I didn't do anything.
Right. Well, I know for me, since I'm signed up for the May half marathon and probably a 5 or a 10K in April, I'm seriously starting my training here in a couple of weeks. And the way I'm looking at training this year is a heart rate technique. And, I think a lot of us have seen the heart rate numbers up on the wall at the gym. I know at my gym, it's posted at least 3 or 4 different places on the walls. And I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about heart rate technique because I know, Jill, you and I have talked about it a bit.
The charts in the gym are usually to give you a percentage of effort. So that if you want to be at 70% of your heart rate or at 50%, it gives you an easy way to calculate that.
Yeah, they go by age, I believe. So it doesn't really take into account how fit you are. The charts on the gym anyway. It's just
right.
For the general population, if you are 50 years old, if you are 55 years old, if you're 60 years old, this is the 85% of your heart rate or 75% of your heart rate.
Right. And then the point is that while you're doing your exercise, you check your heart rate periodically. People used to do that by putting their fingers on their artery and counting for 10 seconds and then multiplying that. And I'm going to be honest, I never managed to count my heart rate accurately for 10 seconds because apparently counting and watching a clock at the same time is beyond my scope.
It's like chewing gum and walking, right?
Yeah.
Well,
this is why I'm not a nurse.
Yeah, I'm not a nurse either. I have a handy dandy wearable technology, a Fitbit now that has a heart rate monitor. So it makes it pretty easy. And before that, I actually had just a heart rate monitor that I used. I think it was a Polar or maybe it was a Timex. And I found that very helpful for not overdoing it.
Yes. So I also have a Fitbit with the heart rate monitor built in, which is very convenient. I also have a heart rate monitor that a Wahoo, not Yahoo.
Oh, you have a Wahoo?
I do.
I heard that's really awesome.
Well, it is. So what's cool about it is that it connects to your phone and gives you all kinds of information. So I should probably use it more than I do. But I think with this year, when I start running, I will break it back out again and try it. Because I didn't really use it a whole lot last year because I had my Fitbit.
Yeah, how many ways do you want to check your heart rate?
Sometimes the data just gets a little overwhelming, like, really?
Yeah, if you don't log it, did it actually happen?
Right, exactly.
Well, I love listening to other podcasts, and recently 2 or 3 of the podcasts that I listen to have had a person on the podcast that specializes or is well known for his heart rate technique. It's the MAF technique. You know who I'm talking about, right, Jill?
Oh, that's Phil Maffetone?
Right.
And he does the slow heart rate training for running.
Yes. And, they talk about go slow to get faster. And it seems counterintuitive to practice going slowly before that will help you increase your speed. And because a lot of the times I've heard people say, well, if you only are doing this slow too much, you're going to treat yourself to just run very slowly. But I like, the more I hear about his technique, I really like that whole idea idea because it's not really about the running part. It's about getting your heart stronger and your cardiovascular system stronger.
So that was one thing I liked about that was that he says, so people who are runners who say, I don't need to do that, is that you may be running, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your whole cardiovascular system is in its best condition. So you start by figuring out your low heart rate, which is basically 180 minus your age. So if you're 50, that would be 130. If you're 60, it'd be 120.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do your training at that, trying to stay at that heart rate, not to go over it.
Right. Well, I think he has some additional things to look at, like if you were just sick or if you exercised a whole bunch. You have to Google him to make sure. We'll put a link in the show notes about this.
Yes. But the point is that when you start, you figure out what your heart rate is, what your heart rate should be.
Yes.
And then you start training at that. And for many of us, the heart rate is so low that it's something that you basically walk or do a brisk walk or a walk-run kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he says that if you keep doing it, in a few weeks, you'll have to start going faster to maintain that heart rate.
That heart rate of like 130 or 120
right.
or if you're 70, it'd be 110.
Yes. Whatever that number
works out to be, right.
You just will eventually start having to run faster to get to that heart rate. So then when you get to a race, your whole cardiovascular system is prepared for running, and you can run faster than you were because you trained your system, your body, to handle it more effectively.
Yeah, it kind of increases the amount of oomph that you've got.
Yeah,
I think you still do some fast interval training, but it's only about maybe 10% of your training time.
Right.
Not always running, medium high. And I guess that's where he says a lot of the people are finding that their times are going slower and slower as they get older. They're not getting better. They're getting slower. And if any of our listeners are finding that, you may want to take a look at this technique because this is a way for older runners to become faster.
I'm interested in it. I'm going to go to the website and plug in the numbers, and I'm going to give it a try.
Sure.
I think that's going to be something I'll do this year.
And, if you're not as interested in getting into all this math and measuring all the stuff, you can just basically pay attention to your breathing. I think he's talked about that as well. If you just look at where you can comfortably carry on a conversation without huffing or puffing or any heavy breathing, if you open your mouth to start breathing, it's too hard. It's nose breathing. And it's amazing how, a nice brisk walk, the next thing you know, you can see how you can increase your heart's ability to pump and your cardiovascular system, I think, basically.
I want to tell you a little story about, so I'm going to talk about the gym next, but I'm going to tell you a little story that I talked to my son yesterday. And my son is in his early 20s.
Okay.
And he went to a gym class, and he said there were only 3 of them there. My son
3
and his
in
girlfriend.
January?
Yes.
Wow.
3, and he said it was a really hard class. He said the third participant was a woman about my age. He said, and she was killing it. He said, I was dying.
Did he ask her name? Was it by any chance Ellie?
I thought, I should like give him business cards or something and have him pass them out as when he meets people like that. Invite them to listen to Becoming Ellie.
Maybe she needs to be a guest.
Maybe. I don't know, but it just made me laugh. But so this is actually the inverse. That's sort of the opposite of what I wanted to talk about, which is, I know at my gym, when I go to an exercise class, unless I go to one that is clearly geared for older people.
Yeah.
If I just go to my regular classes, I am often the oldest person there, or at least I feel like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds in the class. And sometimes that feels a little awkward. Do you think?
Well,
do you have that feeling?
I like it when they play music that I've at least heard on the radio. Or radio, see, that kind of ages me too. Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds at my gym. I would say more 40 and 50-year-olds, but the older 30-year-olds, younger 40-year-olds that are extremely fit, if I try to keep up with them, and when I've just started a new class, one that I'm not used to the routines, let's say push-ups or boot camp, when you're doing burpees or squat thrusts or whatever you call them, I have to pay attention to my own body rather than try to keep up with the class. I like to do a lot of modifications.
Oh, that's true. And the same thing, I remember going to a spin class, a cycling class, the first time I went, and it was just excruciating. And I quickly realized I could not do what everyone else in the class was doing, so I just had to go my own way.
Right. And that's the way it should be in a group exercise class. You kind of pay attention to yourself, not try to kill it the first time.
Right.
Even if you're like your son and his girlfriend in your 20s, you can't kill it right out of the gate.
Well, right. So anyone new if you're just starting back to the gym, be patient with yourself and understand that it takes time to get yourself back to where you were. And some of us may never get. So people who were very athletic in their younger days may never get to where they were when they were 25.
Mm-hmm.
But,
that's okay.
Yeah, I think.
Although I wasn't as strong then as I think I am now, just simply in terms of doing regular exercise. And that goes back to my very first comment or early comment, consistency over intensity. When you start getting too intense, your consistency will fall way off. You won't want to go back to the gym if you did too many squats when your legs are killing, the next day. There's some people that are listeners that regularly do triathlons and are on their bikes doing boot camps, and they really are quite fit. And they're looking for some ideas, perhaps, or motivation, inspiration.
So if you do triathlons, let's say, if you're doing triathlons, the thing probably to do is look at, there's no shortage of increasing your distance. So if you're doing sprints, you go up to Olympic. If you're doing Olympic, go to the half Ironman distance, or ultimately do the full Ironman distance. There's lots of different races. So just doing those, I think, are a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's where signing up for something in advance pays off.
Mm-hmm.
That's where putting something on the calendar might really serve as a good inspiration.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, having a friend to do it with, it makes it a lot more fun. Sometimes people don't want to do longer and longer distances, but maybe they want to do it shorter distances more often. I know we met some people, I don't know if it was last summer or the summer before, but they did something called the half marathon, where they were doing a half marathon every month. It was like a 12-month challenge. I forget what the cute little name was. It Half Marathon Fanatics or something like that. They had a special T-shirt and everything that they.
I think that may be it. Yeah. So that's another option, and so that's where looking for community pays off. I think if you can participate in an online community like Becoming Ellie, but there's also often running clubs or tri clubs or biking groups. They'll push you, you're
right.
They'll come up with a challenge. And if you're looking for that, you might check on some place like maybe meetup.com.
Right. We can put some links in the show notes for some ideas.
But anyway, that's a really good idea, is just to find the community that's doing the similar kind of thing or something that you want to start in.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is if you're a runner and you want a challenge, is maybe start doing something like bicycling.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're a bicyclist, take up swimming or add the strength training in.
Right. Yeah, cross training is always a good idea because it challenges different parts of your body, and you don't wear out so much the ones that, with too much repetitive motion over the same areas. It's kind of like when you have this steady diet of the same foods over and over and you get kind of sick of them. You need some new ideas of things to eat. If you do the same exercises over and over and over, it gets a little more boring,
Well, it does. And plus your body gets used to it and it becomes easier. And you're not getting, for the amount of time you're putting in, you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck,
Yep.
as they say.
Or you're wearing out those joints that, you need to.
That's true.
You need to switch it up sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And in fact, talking about eating and foods and things, I wanted to mention that healthy eating is one of the quote unquote, air quote, goals that I have this next year, but it's mostly to avoid processed foods. I think that's how I define more healthy eating, is no processed foods.
Okay, so your goal for the year is to be healthy and fit. So you're saying that you have to actually think about how you eat to be healthy and fit?
Well, yeah,
yes, I'm laughing because I think that's very true.
It's kind of obvious, I guess. It goes without saying, but in 2012 is when I hit my goal weight, and I've been trying to keep off the weight ever since I lost all that weight. So that's 7 years now. And
that's good.
Each year I kind of look at different things I want to do. And of course, getting more vegetables sounds great, but it's really staying away from those processed foods, the extra sugar that's added into different things, and drive-thrus. I've done really well staying away from drive-thrus. Very rarely do I eat anything from a drive-thru. And that used to be my go-to because life was so hectic, and I didn't prep my food. So
prepping food is a big help if you can. Just chopping up vegetables in advance.
Yes.
Preparing lettuce, if you can, in advance.
Oh, yeah.
Assuming you don't buy bags of lettuce.
Well, yeah, I think that I try to think of V9 or V8. You know how they always say, oh, I could have had a V8, but I don't even like to drink that. I'd rather cut up a whole lot of vegetables and have them all prepared to either roast or to use in one of those salads that I love to make, or to have them as a side to go with chicken or salmon or, whatever I'm ordering.
I mean, I think sometimes just if you could just eat vegetables and a healthy protein thing like salmon or whatever. It's a pretty good meal right there.
And I'm trying to track more in my Fitness Pal because that helps me to be able to go back and find out what worked really well and what didn't.
Yeah, I really struggle with that, and I know it is valuable, but I just I do really this is kind of silly. I do really well tracking breakfast and lunch, and then dinner seems to be more of a challenge for me for some reason.
Well, you know what you could do is add dinner in from the night before the day of so that you're tracking your dinner behind all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Then you know what you ate, and that way when you first wake up and you start to log in your breakfast, go ahead and put in the dinner that you ate the night before.
Right.
And it all rounds out. I mean, that's one way to do it because I struggle with dinner as well.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Well, you know why? It's because dinner tends to be sometimes a little more complex, but that's a good point.
Well, and I know what you mean about that, but to me, I found out when I started doing it that way, I eat a lot of the same dinners, and so it pops up easily.
Mm-hmm. I have tracked in my Fitness Pal, but I tend to go back to Spark People, which I started in probably 9 years ago. So it has a lot of my recipes and groupings and things in there. So it makes it hard to walk away from it because it's got I've done a lot of data entry of recipes and things to get. So
that really makes sense.
It makes it easier to log things. But it is interesting. For one thing, you get a lot of information about the nutrients. And I know we're supposed to just sort of be eating healthy and not tracking nutrients so much. But for those people who do their macros, it's an easy way to do your macros to see how much protein you're eating, how many carbs you're eating, how much fat you're eating.
Right. And I really like to look at how much sugar is in the food. And when I use my Fitness Pal, I can take a look at how much sugar is in the whole day.
Well, and fiber, too. I like to look at how much fiber is in a meal in a day.
Yes.
So lots of good reasons for tracking food. It is something I struggle with. So if I were going to set a goal for that would be one. So when I'm talking about doing one single change, that might be a change to focus on for a few weeks. The other thing I think with logging the food is some people log their food every day and plan to do it for the rest of their life. But I find if I do it for a few weeks, I see what I'm doing, I can make the changes, and then I usually let it go for a while and then come back to it and see how I'm doing. Yeah. There is a lot to be said for just logging it every day, and then you have the information.
Yeah, so I don't know. Is there anything else on healthy eating that we want to talk about? Or?
I am really focusing on inflammation. It seems to me that I've had some skin issues this year and some other things, and that all sort of points to inflammatory problems.
Okay.
I think what I'm going to do is try eliminating some things from my diet and see if I improve. And that will at least give me some idea of what's going on.
You think that the food's causing the inflammation?
Well, I think it's possible.
Certain food?
I think it's possible that it's not helping.
Yeah.
Or it's preventing me from recovering as fully as I would like.
And there's probably certain foods that you could eat that help to reduce the inflammation.
True. So I'm going to experiment on myself and just see what works. So that's sort of my goal for this year, is to figure out what my body responds to and how.
Yeah, I know when we talked with Karen Parrott last summer, she had a lot of ideas and ways that she had looked at her own self of how she could eliminate some inflammation. Interesting.
And I think I'll go back and look at some of those links that we had from her talk and check that out, because she did have a lot of good information about doing an elimination diet and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's sort of my goal for this year.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, my goal is to really focus on my mind and reduce some of the stress that I let build up. You know, you and I met the other day, and I went on and on and on, and you said very quietly and nicely, have you been taking care of yourself? What are you doing for yourself? And it really made me stop and think, oh yeah, me.
Yeah, you do matter in there, and it is a lot easier to take care of others when you are even when you're stronger.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think I need to make a big priority for me. And to me, that means doing yoga, doing some meditation, relaxation techniques. And honestly, I have not been doing spinning like I used to. And I know that really helps get those endorphins going, and I just feel great. It almost becomes, for me, when I'm doing spinning, you can close your eyes, you can listen to music, you don't have to worry about falling or traffic or anything when you're normally bike riding. So it's kind of like meditation in a way. I really enjoy that, and I need to get back doing that. So that's on my list.
Yeah, and it's a good time of year for spinning. And I find that same sort of benefit to hiking.
Oh, okay.
I like to go, I think when I go hiking, it's, you're sort of out in nature, and there's a meditative thing to it, because it's restorative for me.
Yes. Maybe it's the nature.
Maybe. Usually when I go hiking, I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I need, is to find some hiking friends.
Well, I was just thinking hiking doesn't strike me that way, because usually I hike with people that walk much faster than me, and that can be a problem.
Oh, right.
Because I'm a slow walker, I have short legs type thing. It reminds me of a book that I checked out of the library over Christmas break here, and it's called Forest Bathing, which sounds really weird. It's a book from Japan, and it's being with nature. And it's that kind of idea of, I guess, hiking or just being in with nature and how it restores you. I'll put a link to that book. I have found that it's not the same as being outside with nature, but just kind of reading through it has helped.
I think something about being in nature is helpful I think it does reduce stress, at least for me. But the meditation is a good one, and I know people are always suggesting meditation, and I struggle with that one too. There's certain things I just, like logging food, I struggle with getting the meditation in, and I don't know why. Mm-hmm. Why do I resist that so much? But there are some good apps you can use, and maybe that would be the way to do it, is take 10 minutes and listen to one of these meditation apps.
Yeah.
And do it that way.
Or even just focus on the breath for 5 breaths.
Yes.
And call it a 1-minute meditation,
Yes. So there was something I went to a few years ago about eating, healthy eating, and they recommended before any meal, when you sit down, well, 1, sit at a table, and 2, start the meal by doing 3 deep breaths. Sort of calms you down and slows your heart rate and all that, mm-hmm. so that you don't just start attacking your food.
Shovel. Right.
And that's actually a nice little small, easy to do change, but it can be very effective. It actually does work, because I know when I was doing that, it was sort of amazing what that does.
You mean eat with no TV, no computer, and no phone in front of me?
That's tough, I know, but yeah. But no, I meant just doing the 3 breaths.
The 3 breaths. Oh, okay. All good ideas.
Yes.
All good ideas. In fact, I think that when we put the show notes up, I'm going to put these down as a list of tips.
Oh, okay. Good idea.
Because we definitely want to do something to challenge ourselves.
Right.
Wondering what challenges our listeners are trying to go after this year. Maybe they would leave a message, on our voicemail. We do have that new voicemail for the Becoming LA community.
Which is a pretty easy, just a phone call, and you get voicemail and leave a message.
Our phone number for that voicemail is 330-970-6662.
Good. And that's also on the website. You can also, if you don't want to leave voicemail, you can leave a message on the Facebook page or on our website.
Right.
So I guess we'd like people to let us know if they have resolutions or goals for the year, what their action plan is, and just basically how you're challenging yourself this year.
Exactly. So just a reminder, please join our Facebook group. It's a great way to get support for your challenges and maybe some ideas on how you want to reach your goals.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so join us again next time on the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast for the Becoming LA community. We're looking forward to 2019.
We sure are. Thanks.